the sword of right action. The sword symbolizes the individual's mind. But this is only if we establish an internal hierarchy where our reason is guided by our will. Properly handled, the sword becomes a servant of our will. It represents the analytical power of the mind. In this, it becomes a tool for cutting away resistance, for severing the connections to any thought, emotion, or idea that saps our willpower. When we see the mind properly as a sword, we can then begin to use our mind for the principal purpose for which it was designed, as a tool for overcoming problems. As our analytical faculty, it chunks down problems into eminently manageable parts, revealing the chink in the armor of obstacles and opponents that, when looked at as a whole, appear to be too large to tackle. Understood in this respect, the mind becomes the chief ally of will. We apply its analytical cutting edge for making our way through brambles and for cleaving the perceived strength of complex barriers. Honed and sharpened, its edge exposes the vulnerability of seemingly invulnerable monsters. Properly aimed, its point drives deep into imposing castle walls, symbolically whatever problems we may be laying siege to at the moment. And it does this at the exact point that causes these walls to crumble. The razor-sharp mind is empowered by precise knowledge. Knowledge that leads to efficient action. The principal powers of the sword are intellectual. Primarily, the power of reasoning objectively. The power to demarcate, to set boundaries, and to recognize limits, and to effectively discriminate between qualities and values, and to recognize the distinction between true and false. The sword of the mind has two edges, capable of cutting in any which way that is necessary. Its blade is razor sharp and culminates in a point. Analysis cuts things into pieces to better understand them. It identifies weak points and strong points. The will is a weapon of unity. Concentrating our forces, it unifies our actions with a consolidated purpose. The sword is a weapon of division, dividing problems to conquer them, chunking them down into manageable and defeatable parts. The sword cuts away excess baggage. It eliminates drag. It trims away the fat, streamlining our efforts, cutting threads of unnecessary entanglements that might squander our precious energy. Useless talks, purposeless work, futile concerns, ungrounded fantasies. In this, the sword circumscribes the jurisdiction of our actions. It determines the domain of our potential effectiveness. The sword guides our actions, severing impulsive, fanatical conclusions. The sword is, of course, a weapon of defense. It zealously guards our values. It keeps our judgment sound. By our sword, we cut away contrary ideas. The sword represents the mind's discernment, that faculty with which we cut away the manipulative rationalizations of others and ourselves. Anything that attempts to weaken and sabotage our good work. The sword is also the power of decision. With a swift slice of the sword, we decide what is to be and what is not to be. This is the art of passing righteous judgment. To decide means to kill a point. The sword is the power we wield when we decide. That's to say, when we say no to one of the options presented to us. By the blade of the razor-sharp mind, we exercise our capacity for quality, executive discrimination, a clear-cut clarity about what really applies to our life's purpose and what does not. Properly handled, we utilize the discriminating faculty of the mind to actively define and divide beneficial aims from those that lead us astray through idle curiosity. With the sword, we sever the devil's tongue, freeing our perception from chaotic emotions and righteously severing attachment to those things which do not serve our main purpose in life. Handling the sword wisely implies the power of scrutiny. With this power, we use the force of the sword to make hard decisions. And we do this with enough boldness to face the necessary consequences of our decisions.